Hi, my name's Shawn Lynch. I'm joined by Jansen, and this is the Shawn and Shawn Show. Week 2 of the basketball season. We haven't...
Week 2 of our show.
Right. Not a lot of games have happened, but we got to see the CCC opener for the boys. Lots of close battles, some interesting outcomes in that first night.
Very interesting. If you look at Golden Valley and Turlock, free throw contest kind of broke out with Turlock winning that one 62-53. Merced, nice win over Atwater to open up things there.
Nice competitive game. Probably closer than it should have been because of free throw shooting by the Bears down the stretch, but they came out and they got themselves a convincing, hard-fought defensive win, and then close game also between Pittman and Buhay.
Yeah, Pittman wins 52-50 at home. We'll break down the first week of the boys. We'll talk a little bit about the girls. Merced coach Hector Nava is going to stop by after their big win over Atwater. But before that, here's our sights and sounds from last week.
Let's go ahead and take a look back at last week's action. Let's start out in Turlock. The tweets heard around the world. Nothing but whistles all night long.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever been covering a game where I tweeted out the foul counts after each quarter and who was in foul trouble at halftime, but that was the type of game it was. It was just called tight from start to finish. I don't know if either team kind of changed their game to accommodate the officiating. I don't know if they could have. Coach Keith Hunter for Golden Valley kind of said after, he said, I don't know what they want us to do, just to sit back in a 2-3 zone and not move. He was not happy with it. If you read the comments in this paper, he just ripped the officials, said it was the worst officiated game he's ever seen. Said he didn't want to take anything away from the win for Turlock. Turlock won the game, but he just could not fathom a game being called that way.
No, and it's not like Keith Hunter was the only one upset by the way the game was called. I don't imagine Doug Cornfoot enjoyed how it went either. I mean, this was a highly anticipated matchup that they allowed to have zero flow whatsoever, and it should have been a damn fine basketball game.
Yeah, and one of Keith Hunter's questions is who holds these officials accountable for when a game's called like that or when officiating kind of goes rogue. Who's checking on these guys to make sure that they're following through and refereeing up to the standards of varsity basketball. And so it's probably something we'll look into this week to kind of get to the bottom of that. But going in, nice game for Kenny Frazier. Really came up big in the second half for Turlock. He made some shots down the stretch to help Turlock pull away. Devin Baines had a nice game, 23 points. Golden Valley was just in. Josh Sykes hardly played in the game. He picked up 2 fouls early, sat out most of the first half, then came back in and picked up 3 quick fouls and technical. So he was hardly a factor in the game. Evan Stallone, he had 3 fouls in the first half. picked up his fourth, and then he was out early in the fourth. So, Golden Valley really had to go deep on their bench to kind of finish the game. And even at the end of the game, there was 3 or 4 Golden Valley players with 4 fouls. So it was kind of just ridiculous from the get-go.
Yeah, it sounded like one of the differences might have been that Turlock's big 3 were not necessarily in the foul trouble despite all the fouls being called.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the bulk of Turlock's scoring, it's all done by Baines, Frazier, and Denton McFadden, and none of those guys were really in key foul. Frazier picked up 2 fouls in the first half and had to sit for a little bit, but he really didn't have to miss much time compared to when you look at what Stallone and Sykes had to miss. And then Golden Valley's other players that have stepped up at times, you look at Devin Powell, Ben Fletcher, those guys really didn't step up in the scoring column for Golden Valley. It was kind of Christian Carroll scoring most of his points in the second half. So, tough start for Golden Valley. There's still 9 games left, plenty of time. I think they'll be fine. But now their work's cut out for them if they want to win a 3rd straight CCC title.
Yeah, I mean, you just got to take the approach that they've held serve at home. So now when it comes back to Golden Valley, they got to take care of business.
And there's plenty of time Golden Valley doesn't control its destiny as far as winning a title outright with 9 games to go because they're going to need somebody to upset Turlock. But I think Merced's capable. I think Atwater's capable if they play the right games. The CCC is going to be pretty tough with at least those 4 teams, and Pittman too.
No, and I mean, talking to a number of coaches before the season started, they felt it could be one of the more competitive CCC seasons we've seen in a long time. You look at the scores from the first night, all the games are within 10 points, so maybe there's something to that.
All right, let's turn our attention to the game you were at, Merced and Atwater. Merced wins 50-44, kind of jumped out early and then kind of had to hold on late, did the Bears.
Ugly first quarter.
6-6.
Yeah, they're sometimes you see that in some of the varsity girls games that's very competitive, but it's rare to see that kind of offensive display in a boys game. I attributed it to some poor shot selection, but really both teams were just getting after it defensively, and they were letting them go obviously much more than a year game. It was a physical game. Both teams kind of took a little while to feel each other out. Merced started getting things going in the second quarter. They went on an 11-0 run to kind of break the game open a little bit. First real run anybody had in the whole game. Alonzo Gilliam, he's their freshman point guard. He kind of started getting a little more aggressive in terms of attacking the basket. He had 6 straight points. It kind of sparked the team, and Merced did a better job attacking the basket after that. Defensively, Merced gets a lot of credit. They made it very, very difficult to get the ball inside to Ben Peterson, who everybody knows is Atwater's number 1 choice in running the offense through. And talking to Tony Hillier after the game, it wasn't like Merced was playing a high-pressure defense. They kind of sat back. They waited out Atwater in their offense. They denied inside to the post. But basically, they waited for Atwater to try and throw one, and then they just used their quickness to jump in the passing lanes, and so they forced a ton of turnovers that way. But it wasn't because they were making them go right. It was more just athleticism and quickness and waiting for Atwater to make the mistake, and Atwater made plenty of mistakes that night. Game got close down the stretch. You got to give Atwater credit. I think they had 19 points in the first 3 quarters. They scored 25 in the fourth. They kept fighting in the end. Maybe they waited a little long to go to a more pressure defense. They went full court. They started getting some turnovers from Merced, and then Merced did them several favors when they were forced to foul, not knocking down shots at the free throw line down the stretch.
Buhack goes to Pittman last Friday. Had a nice first half. Looked like they were in good position. Then they give up 20 points in the third quarter. Buhack outscores Pittman 10-6, but not enough as Pittman wins 52-50. Sets up some nice matchups for this Friday because the teams don't play on Wednesday. But you got Merced going to Pittman in a battle of 2 teams that are 1-0, and then a big game at Golden Valley with Atwater and Golden Valley, both teams 0-1 to start.
Yeah, nobody wants to be 0-2 there. It looks like it could be a pretty competitive league top to bottom. So if you fall out of that top 3, it may be tough to climb your way back into it. So definitely a game both teams are going to have. And if Atwater really wants to be contenders, it's one they got to win.
Yeah. Shout out in the Southern League, Mariposa boys and Ripon Christian's 43-game Southern League winning streak. Mariposa sits atop the league, I think, at 3-0 there. Dalton Rockwood with 14 points, Bradley Chambers with 10 points, 3 big three-pointers for them. Nice win for the Grizzlies.
Yeah, I mean, we got to see him a little bit in the Save Mar Classic earlier in the year. Edmondson does a nice job with the team. Not overwhelming size like they've had in years past, but just good kind of rock-solid basketball players, and they play well as a team. I mean, that's how they get it done. They don't have a lot of star power, but they work well as a team, and, that's kind of refreshing to see.
All right. Well, Merced's Hector Nava was able to stop here after practice on Monday night, and here's what he had to say. All right, we're here with Merced coach Hector Nava, fresh off your guys' win against Atwater to open up CCC play last week. Talk about how big was that game. You got two teams that hope to be in the top three and make the playoffs this year. Kind of a big one right out of the gate.
I mean, it was huge. I mean, everything we've done since day one has been trying to lead to CCC. Our preparation, everything I talked about was, let's get into Atwater, let's take care of the first game. And when you're able to do that, I mean, it feels good. And you can feel it on the kids' attitude in practice after the game. You could just feel it. It was very big for them. And us getting that victory, 1-0. Now the next thing is Pittman now.
Talk about what's different about this group of guys than the other possibly two. It seems like you got more basketball players instead of athletes just playing basketball.
Right. The off season, having Calvin, Jonathan, Travis, Brandon Blackwell, some of those kids that have been with me year round, that was huge for us. Because coming with the Merced has a lot of football players, and having those kids with me all year round, when those football kids came, they already understood what was happening because I had those kids for such a long time, and it just became a classroom learning, inside the gym, and it made everything much easier as a coach. This year with these kids, they're bought in. They're all in. They're there to learn, and that's what makes it good for a coach.
Prior to Central California Conference play getting underway, you guys went up to Sonora and won the Columbia tournament, winning 3 games there, beating Escalon and Bayer in the process. How big was that for you guys, kind of going into league to get that?
Right, that was huge because we came from Consumers Oaks tournament, and we lost a tough one at the end. We played Elk Grove for 3rd place, I believe, and we had a 16, 17-point lead with about 5 minutes to go of the game. And when you lose that, and you got one more tournament to go before you start league, the kids were down a little, and I knew going into that tournament was going to be big for us. So, us going into Christmas, me having to think about it during Christmas time, getting the practices ready, I knew it was huge, and the kids came out big. I think they learned a lot from that loss that we took. And that's the whole thing about basketball is what are you going to do sometimes when adversity strikes? How are you going to learn from it? And they did a good job, and winning that was huge for us, especially for those seniors.
Friday night, I was at the Golden Valley Turlock game. We had a situation where the game was called really tight. I think both coaches kind of were upset with the way the game was called. You end up with the 73, 74 free throws and 53 foul calls. As a coach, kind of put yourself in that situation. What can you do when the game's kind of being called a way that you don't like? Or, is there a way to change the officials? How do you talk to officials during something like that?
Yeah, for me as a coach, sometimes, especially learning from Keith, sometimes as far as preparing your kids for it, you put them in that situation in practice. A lot of times we're the bad one in practice, and you put them through that havoc, through that pressure, through that making bad calls, and hopefully your kids adjust when you get into the game. Now, when you get to the game as a coach, you just got to somehow manage yourself, not to step over, because especially at Merced with the kids that I have, I learned how to just try to control myself as best as I can, because they see me fiery, they're going to do the same thing. So it's hard, but it's hopefully you got a great coaching staff, and I think Golden Valley does have Jerry Stallone, who does a great job. They're able to control them, keep them in a positive way where you don't step that line over. At the same time, you try to keep the officials on your side as much as you can, but sometimes you just experience will get you through it, and hopefully for me, I got some good coaches, Mono, Coach Smith, a couple of those guys that are trying to keep me under control in those situations,
Well, let's talk about your coaching pedigree. You played at Merced High under Vince Clemens. The court's name Clemens Court, and then you went and started coaching at the high school level under Keith Hunter at Golden Valley. How did those two kind of help mentor you, and what did you learn from them?
Right. Even before I got to Vince Clemens, I had a coach named Caesar. Coach Caesar, he was big. He was
Dennis
big
Caesar.
Dennis Caesar, he was big with me. He taught me a lot. And then when I got to Vince, Coach Caesar did a great job of getting me ready for that. And then with Coach Vince Clemens, he was, the type of players he had, oh man, it was unbelievable. And he did a great job with those kids. Just watching him, his attitude, now that I reflect back and watch some of those games, the way he was at the games, the way he kept his composure, it's like he had an attitude that he knew he was going to win. That was just unmatched. It's like he knew he was going to win. And as a coach, when you see a coach like that, it's like as a player, you believe you're going to win. And then stuff that he did in practice that you remember, it's just great the way he was able to organize certain things to have such great players. And with Keith, it's just awesome the way he holds the practice. Literally, from point 1 to point 2 to point 3, everything's go. Everything's organized. He's in control. He knows exactly what he's doing because of his preparation. And that's something that I learned big time from Keith is his preparation. I think the hardest thing is just to prepare for a practice. Once you get to a practice, you prepare for so long that day or that night that when you get into practice, it becomes the easy part. Because you're already dialed in, exactly know what's going on. And that's something I learned from Keith Hunter is preparation's a key.
Let's talk about some of your players. You got a freshman playing up at the varsity, Alonzo Gilliam. What did you see in him that kind of told you that he belonged at the varsity level?
Something that I always thought talking about with Vince, talking about with Keith Hunter is they said a good person will always make a great basketball player. And something you saw Alonzo when he came in and I talked to him, he was just a very, very good kid. And I have a lot of good kids. But different with him was he was physically, his speed, his defensive tenacity that he has. He's like, you can't bypass that guy. I was like, I got to have that guy with me. And then when he's coachable and he's relentless and he's tough, as a varsity coach, you got to love it. And he just has it all in him. And that's why I knew he was going to be with me, just his toughness that he brings to the table.
And then another young guy that you got to like, A.J. Stewart.
Right. Oh, man, AJ's great. Especially offensively, he's working extremely hard defensively, but offensively, he's extremely special. He's one of those guys, he's a basketball guy. And I haven't had too many of those. And having AJ, him being a basketball guy, it's easy to coach because those guys are willing to learn.
Another basketball guy that also plays football, Trevante Richard, kind of asking him to do some different things this year, go inside and play the 5 on defense, match up with some bigger players.
Right. Trevante has seen it all. I had him, this is his 3rd year. He understands the shooting guard, he understands the post, he understands the point guard, and he's willing to do whatever for the team to be successful. And God's gave him a gift, playing basketball, and he does a great job. In practice, I have him playing the 5, the 3, the 2, the point guard, and he's embraced it. And the young kids see that, and they follow him. And that's what's making this a great run right now.
Talk about the matchup Friday night. You guys are going to Pittman. It's always a tough place to play there. Talk about following up what you guys did last week against Atwater, trying to do that at Pittman.
Right. Well, the good thing is it gives us 4 days to prepare. And, the deception, for some reason, we always had a hard time shooting there. I don't know what it is. So, when you go to Pittman, you better be ready to defend. You got to be ready to defend because you never know what could happen offensively. And we had a hard time shooting before. As you can see with Atwater, the score was 6-6 in the first quarter. So it could happen at any time. So for us, defensively, we have to be ready to go. And Pittman has been playing some pretty good basketball. And we haven't seen them since the season started. But seeing them in the summer, they're pretty, Harvey does a good job with them. And they're well organized, they're prepared. So we have to be, I treat this like a playoff game. It's huge for us because then we have Turlock after that, so we can't bypass Pittman. We got to focus.
Yeah, with the 10-game schedule, it is like every game is so paramount.
Right, and that's as a coach when you have 4 days to prepare. You better prepare. You better get yourself and your team ready because the last thing you want to walk into Pittman and say, you know what, my team wasn't prepared. I don't want to have that mentality. I want my kids ready to go. They need to be ready to work, be relentless that night, and they got to understand exactly what we need to do to accomplish the task.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us, Hector, and good luck this year.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Cool. All right, the CCC girls action gets underway Tuesday night. Let's look at some of the openers here because they're only playing one day this week. We got Buhack going to Pittman. Buhack is trying to win their third straight CCC title this year. Off to a good start this year during the non-conference play. You got Allison Wisdom. It's done really well to improve her outside shot to kind of give her another weapon to go with her ability to drive. And then you got the Coward sisters, Brandy and Barbara, and Taj Steele has really been playing well. I think Buhack's kind of the team to beat in the CCC, but it's always tough going to Pittman and trying to pull out a win there.
Yeah, I mean, Hector Nava talked about it in the interview. You don't go to Pittman expecting to score points. Yeah, we'll get that out. Not an easy place to shoot because of the depth of the gym. Not real great lighting. It's kind of a cave. And you got to come defensively, and you got to get your jump points. You got to eat up the rebounds, get as many offensive rebounds and putbacks as you can, and just be in for a kind of knockdown, drag-out fight. You don't see a lot of teams get blown out in the Pittman gym. It's almost always close games.
But this is where I like Buhack Connie's style because their bread and butter is their defense, their ability to pressure. Brandy Coward's probably one of the best defenders in the CCC. So they're really going to pressure the ball, try and force turnovers, and get some easy points in transition, which is going to help going into that place. Interesting game. You got Merced and Atwater, two teams that are just under 500 going into league play. The big question here, I don't know if Delana Jones is going to play. She sat out their game against Enoch. She was in a walking boot. Heard she practiced a little bit on Monday, but we'll see if she's able to go. She could be a big difference in this matchup.
Yeah, Atwater has veterans. They got an experienced team, but they don't have that big size inside. And Jones could really be a big factor one way or another in this game. How available she is to go and how effective she'll be if she's in there. These are two teams that expect to be there in the playoffs and expect to make a run at the title this year. So this is a big opener for both of them. Kind of get the opportunity to make an early statement against some of the other teams that think they're going to be in the playoff race.
And the one thing, even if Jones doesn't play, I think Merced's got a shot here. They play a lot of players. They go 8, 9 deep. So I don't think missing Delon is going to hurt him too much in this game because Atwater doesn't have a lot of height. I think they're going to need her when they play the Buhacks and that type of game. It'll be interesting to see. You got two teams that kind of can struggle on offense when their shots aren't falling. I guess most teams struggle when the shots aren't falling. But it's like, where do they go from there when their shots aren't falling? Can they penetrate? Can they find other ways to score? And I think Merced's got the quickness and the speed to kind of do that defensively to set up easy shots and easy points.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine it's going to be a defensive-minded game. Both teams like to get after it.
Possible another 6-6 quarter.
We'll have to see if they can top the boys. But, I mean, I imagine it's going to be both teams are going to try to play at pace. They're both going to bring pressure. It's just going to come down to who can do a little better execution offensively.
Mm-hmm. We got Golden Valley hosting Turlock. Golden Valley going into CCC play at 9-8. They're most wins in a season since 2009.
Yeah, Matt Thiessen really has his kids playing well, and I think talking to him the other day, he said there's really only one senior on the team. I mean, the bulk of them are coming back. Very young group. They've had some troubles heading towards CCC play. Mm-hmm. They could be much higher up record-wise. They've had 2 or 3 games where they kind of collapsed in the fourth quarter, and they had another near miss recently. If they can learn how to finish games off with the way they're playing, they're going to be competitive in the league.
Talking to Thiessen, he said one thing, the girls are just having fun. I mean, they haven't had this type of success since they've been at school. So, yeah. I mean, it's just fun winning games, being in games, having a chance to win. They're enjoying their season, and they think, if things go right, they feel like they can play with most of the teams in the CCC. He said, we probably got to prove to ourselves that we can still play with Buhack. They're probably the one team that's above everybody else.
Right.
And Merced may give them problems with their speed, but everybody else, they expect to be in more games. And if you're in the game, you got a chance, especially when you got a shooter like Camille Flores.
And like we talked about last show, they're getting good, solid contributions from everybody else. That's kind of one of the things that's been missing for them the last few years. Mm-hmm. You can get 4, 5, 6 points from your other players and then get a nice night from Flores. That's all it takes to win in high school girls basketball sometimes.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for our show this week. We're going to be on hiatus next week, but we'll come back in 2 weeks with another show.